IVM.
This is Storytellers and Story Sellers live on tape. You're listening to me, Vineet, on the IVM Podcast Network. This is the 100th episode of Storytellers and Story Sellers. I timed it in such a way that the 100th episode of the show would be the first episode of 2022. So here's wishing all of you a very, very happy new year. I hope all of you stayed safe over the holiday period. I hope all of you had wonderful holiday periods to take in a year which was quite something, right? 2021. A lot of us thought after the hellscape that was 2020 that 21 was going to be a little bit easier. Well, it was maybe a little bit easier in some regards, but it got a whole lot tough by the end of it. Not just because of COVID, because of the uncertainty constantly changing, things constantly changing around us. 1 week you're going to office, the other week you're still at home. Not knowing what's coming next week has been a strange state of mind to live in. And we're still in that state as we enter 2022, although the optimist in me says that 2022 is going to be better. Let's hope for that. I'm excited to start off this year with the 100th episode of the show. It is a pleasure to bring the show to you every week. I started this podcast as a way of capturing learnings and wisdom from the best and the brightest in Indian entertainment, whether it was people who were on screen or creating, or people who were behind the scenes in deal making or producing. Over these 100 episodes, I've spoken to actors, poets, writers, directors, comedians, musicians, label heads, producers, talent managers, drone flyers, researchers, influencers, and even a beatboxer. That's a shout out to Ballsy. I feel like this show has been a real eye-opener for me in many ways about the power of creation. There's a joy to creating and putting yourself out there in the world that is really unmatched. And to do so consistently, week on week, gives me the satisfaction of giving back to this industry that has always been such a source of happiness, intrigue, nostalgia, fun, entertainment, and more. To me, it's such a privilege to have any part of your life recorded for posterity. And I think we've done a good job of using this platform, this podcast. We've used it to curate parts of the world of entertainment that otherwise often just don't get recorded at all. And that's all thanks to you for providing the energy and the inspiration for me to create this show. And like with anything good, it takes a village to put this show together. So thank you to everyone who works on it, including my producers from the beginning, Antariksh, Vishal, Aditya, and now Sumit, to Anna and Ekta and the team at IVM, and to Kavita and Amit Doshi, the mummy daddy of podcasting in India, and to Smita for providing the spark for this show over 2 years ago. And thanks to you all, my listeners, who keep me on my toes with all the questions about the show, the great feedback on the conversations with my guests. Thank you for tuning in to Storytellers and Story Sellers. If you like the show, please do 3 things. Give us a rating on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else. Leave us a review anywhere you like, on social media or on podcasting apps, wherever. And finally, tell a friend who might love to hear about the behind-the-scenes goings-on in the worlds of showbiz, from movies to podcasting, technology, and everything else, which is what I plan to do, hopefully, in the next 100 episodes of this show. We have some great guests lined up, the most exciting content creators, the most interesting storytellers, the smartest and the most influential business executives who are making things happen with their mad moves behind the scenes. I would also love to hear who you think could be an interesting conversation on this show. Let me know. Give me a shout on Twitter or Instagram. I'm at Ashcharyafakit. So now, on with today's show, where I have pulled off some kind of coup. Today's episode features some heavy hitters. You've got TechnoGamerz, Barkha Singh, Jasleen Royal, Gaurav Taneja, Ritu Rati, all of them featuring together for the first time on a podcast episode. Are you shocked? Don't be. Come back after these messages for the 100th episode of Storytellers and Story Sellers with me, Vineet.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are 0 charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Here we yeah, this is the 100th episode of Storytellers and Storysellers with me, Vineet Kanabar, live on tape, and I am Vineet. To celebrate this 100th episode milestone and to give you all a glimpse of the massive smarts of the guests on this show, I put together 10 of the most amazing insights, according to me, on this show. To be honest, there were so many wonderful moments of clarity, inspiration, so many great takeaways during the 99 previous episodes that we've done. That's really hard to pick a few out of them. But my new producer, Sumit, and who also happens to be from Nagpur, and me picked out a few that really hit home. So sit back, relax, open a can of beer, or get a cup of coffee, or get your juice cleanse on, and listen to some amazing people talk about how they do what they do in this ever-changing world of entertainment. As told to me, Vineet Kanabar, on this show, Storytellers and Storysellers, in the past 99. We start out with a conversation that happened on literally the very first episode of Storytellers and Storysellers. If I say so myself, that episode is a must listen for anyone who's keen on understanding the nuances of writing for the screen in any which way. Whether you're writing a web series, you're writing a branded content show or a film or whatever else, you have two stalwarts. Saurabh Khanna, the writer of Kuka Factory, Hostel Days, Yemeni Family, and more TVF gems, and Tarun Tripathi, veteran of creating branded entertainment across Yash Raj Films, TVF, OML, a bunch of other places. We sat down for what was a very interesting first conversation for me. The show was just out of pilot at that time. Kavita sat in on that conversation and it was amazing. We spoke, I think, for about an hour, 40 minutes or so, out of which we turned out a first episode, which was about a 70-minute conversation, very, very long these days. So here it is. First clip, I asked Saurabh Khanna to break down the nuances between writing for film, TV and web. And he gives me in his own inimitable style the similarities or differences in these three formats that Indians seem to love consuming. It's brilliant in this clip how he is able to break down almost to an exact science the inputs that go into writing today. And these learnings I have used in many conversations and decisions about creating content. Here's Saurabh Khanna talking about writing.
From my experience, especially working with you, I've realized that web series or web content sells as much on the strength of the writing as it is on the talent. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts?
Vis-a-vis films in Bollywood, I'll say that web series sells a lot more on writing.
Right.
What has been created content, because though there are like you can say mini celebrities or known faces that can give an edge or maybe enable viewers to like clickbaiting can happen.
Right.
They may come to watch that face. But unlike Bollywood, where they go for the star, even if whatever is the story, I'm going for the person. On web series, people don't come for the person as of now. And mostly they come for the content, direction and writing and what you have created.
Right. And what are some sort of subtle differences in the way that you would approach writing a web series versus say a sketch versus maybe a film?
Let me break it down into like a web series and a film first. Writing a film is a trickier business. See, if you don't follow the grammar very precisely, a film can very easily fall from category of like a potboiler to a, you can say, art film. If you don't follow the beats very correctly, a film can very easily move from a commercial film to say an art film.
Right.
You have to have like a rise of conflict and then a satisfactory ending. So you have to raise conflict, raise the stakes to a certain level and then convincingly resolve them so that audience feels it was done right. And that is very essential because Bollywood is Bollywood film is a one continuous viewing. So even if second half is weak, you will criticize the film. If first half is slow, you will come out and don't give a good feedback.
Right.
It has to be sumptuous, like complete experience at one go. But we can cheat in web series. See, though I write web series, I can say, see, what happens is we start with a good storyline. You're like, what the hell are they doing? Great. We can leave a hook point and you are like, what a great story. Then you will come for second episode, you will come for third episode, you will keep coming for all the episodes. In finale, if I just wrap up the story, just like that, nothing much. And there are examples right now on web which have great first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh episode and you are like, what the hell is happening? How will I'm waiting for the finale and then you are like, what the hell, ये क्या किया? और आप आधे घंटे गालियां देते रहते हो. पर लफड़ा ये है, just by your viewing the finale, it has got the views.
Right.
And still there is no, like you can say, as he was saying, web series on that front is like still in on fringes. Web series medium is still on fringes, so not everybody writes reviews. There are not rating systems, so you never realize. So whatever is good gets recognition, but then you might be stumbling upon something. Oh, I'm watching something and I'm liking it, and you may not know how will it end. So that often we also have done it sometimes. Yeah, not so great ending, not so sumptuous ending, but still we went with the series.
Right. So what I'm hearing is you still have a wider canvas on a web series in terms of storytelling, but there's no compulsion in sort of giving it that grandiosity that a movie needs in terms of resolutions, etc. There's an opportunity to.
It's not only about production value, grandiose within
the storytelling.
Within the storytelling.
Right, absolutely.
And to that, I will also add, on TV, this cheat code is far bigger. They
Right.
keep on dragging the story for 200, 300, 400 episodes. In India, TV stories never end.
Right.
They are just taken off here.
They have, pardon the joke, but they always have a rebirth of some kind.
Yeah. So it's very easy, what the best word will be trolling. They keep trolling.
Absolutely.
Now this is happening, that is happening. So we web series never had the luxury of trolling that much, but still we don't have that compulsion still on.
Now, wasn't that just wonderful? Just a raw thought process. Obviously, he's really thought about and worked on it and used it, but just such a great way of breaking down the experience of creating for different screens. The next clip I have for you on this episode today is Barkha Singh talking about the importance of authenticity on social media. Now, Barkha is an amazing creator, right? She's done web series, she's hosted shows, but people tune into her most for her social media, right? Now, this was an epic learning episode for me, listening to Barkha talk about building an authentic personal brand on social media. Now, of course, there are all of those people who will make courses and tell you this is how you go ahead and build your brand, etc., etc. But when you see someone do it over years and years of hard work, where every part of their personality seems to be really authentically presented to their fans, build a community around themselves, that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know Barkha's secrets about creating this brand and this vibrant social media presence that she has. And she said her really simple secret: create a brand that is actually true to who you are. It sounds so simple, so easy, but Barkha really talked about how she brings it to life, lets her audience come into her life in a very authentic manner. Barkha obviously uses her social platform to create conversation around animal welfare and climate change and fashion and trends and humor as well. Here's Barkha's two-step process for building a very strong personal brand. How did you ensure that the authenticity of who Barkha Singh the person is comes through in the brand that you're curating for yourself? What were the conscious decisions that went into it, and how was that built in? Like, I know travel is important to you, right? I know pets are important to you as well, right? And again, many people choose not to make it part of who their brand is, so to speak, right? But I think it lends such a beautiful authenticity to yours. So how did that come about? How did you ensure that authenticity was retained?
I think the trick is to make sure that the brand you're creating for yourself is as close to the person you are. I did say that Barkha as a person is different and Barkha as a brand is different. But they're not very different. Like, Barkha as a person deeply cares about animal welfare, and that's why I'm so vocal about it on my social media handles. So there are two ways of going about this, or rather two steps in which I personally went about it. First, I identified that what are the main things I stand for? What are the things that are most important in my life? Those were going to be a part of the brand Barkha. Okay. Now, the other trick to do is that you don't bombard your brand with everything altogether, because you're never going to be able to do justice to anything. So what I personally did was just introduce each of these aspects of my life as a person slowly and one by one. Right. So if you notice, it was initially when I just started out on my social media journey, it was very focused on my acting jobs. It was very focused on just portrait photos and Barkha as an actor. Okay. After that is when I started slowly getting into my travels, because again, creating travel content and monetizing it is something that doesn't happen overnight. Because I liked traveling and because I kept traveling on personal trips as well. I just kept filming stuff and putting it up. And that's how, and then obviously the different tourism boards of different countries got on board and we started creating content together and all of that. So that's how another aspect got introduced to my social media presence. Along this, now, this third phase that I feel I'm currently, actually I'm in the fourth phase now.
Right.
The third phase, which I feel I recently just kind of completed or culminated, was when I started very, very actively and vocally talking about animal welfare and the environment in general. Because, okay, now you also need to see that the topics you talk about should be backed by your credibility online and as a person.
Absolutely.
If people don't know me, like Barkha 3 years ago, that people didn't know, if she was talking about animal welfare and environmental issues, I probably wouldn't have that big of an audience to make a sizable impact, and to be taken seriously. So what I did was worked towards making myself a credible source of information or someone who people, take seriously. And that's when I started talking about things that are important to me. So to cut it short, like to just summarize that, one, you need to just make sure that your brand is close to who you are. And two, do it step by step, because it's never fruitful to just throw everything together like a khichdi.
That's such a marvelous way of putting what we see all around us. Influencers and creators trying to be someone that they're not, but she puts it down so easily. The next clip on this 100th episode, special episode that we are doing today, is from the first name in Indian fiction podcasting. I had Mantra Mugdh on an episode of this show to talk about his journey with writing fiction podcasts. And Mantra, of course, is like the Amitabh Bachchan, right, of Indian podcasting. And he talks about the process of creating a high quality fiction podcast, how it's not really very different from writing a play or really making an engaging movie, but he really traces the journey from idea to recording. He compares Bhaskar Bose, the sort of epic detective show that he's created, and there's a Bhaskar Bose universe where there's a show called I Hear You, there's a show called Dana Mana Hai with Dr. Phobia, there are multiple characters. So Bhaskar Bose is like an entire MCU kind of a universe itself, right? And he compares making Bhaskar Bose to creating a gourmet dish. He passionately talks about how Bhaskar Bose has evolved since his first episode to now it's 200, talking about how the podcast really is a living organism.
Let me pivot this away from radio onto podcasts a little bit. I want to know, and I mean, the reason why I want to know this specifically from you is while there are a lot of podcasts that are emerging, and IVM does a lot of podcasts, and other players are there creating so many more podcasts as well, fiction podcasting is still, I feel, in its very, very nascent stage in India. We're just about getting started, and there are some lovely podcasts out there with fiction. You named all of them globally, but in India, that journey has just started. Where did the inspiration for Talkies then, in the company that's creating Bhaskar Bose and I Hear You and the upcoming Dar Ka Raaz with Dr. Phobia, where did the inspiration for fiction podcasting come, and how did you start that journey? I would love to know what your state of mind was then. What was the consideration? What was the opportunity that you saw?
Well, first of all, Vineet, the reason why it is not, I mean, as you called it, nascent, and it is not many people are doing it. That's because it's not easy.
Right.
Podcasts की दुनिया बटी हुई है. Podcast यहाँ पर एक podcast है जो आप और मैं कर रहे हैं. You and me are doing it. Here I am sitting at my home. You're sitting in Nagpur. We're having a conversation over the phone, and ban gaya podcast. But this, I can't make Bhaskar Bose like this. It needs almost the same procedure that it takes to make a play or a film. It starts from the script, it goes to casting, it goes to that recording, and that recording is so important when you do it as a group, when you do it as a cast together. Then, of course, the background music, the foley, and everything that goes into it. So it's almost like making a dish, Vineet. And I feel like a chef when I do that. And maybe that's the reason why, that's what got me going into this, because I love, like I said again, storytelling as theater, as the medium, and audio as the genre. I wanted to mix them up together. So podcast, yes, I've been doing it on radio or off radio for 20 years now. But this was something that excited me more than just having a conversation, which I absolutely love. I love the 90% of content that is out there in the podcast world, which is basically conversations. conversations between two people, interviews, or discussions on topics. But this is an absolutely specialized genre. It requires an absolute different approach. It cannot be approached the same way you approach podcasts.
It's very, 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 very clear to me that there are two schools of thought here, right? There is the talk and conversation podcast, and then there is fiction. You said it's exactly like doing a play. There's an entire process of casting, there's an entire process of scripting, there's an entire process of the production that goes on behind the scenes. Tell me why then in this entire space as well, right? What you've chosen to do is what could be the hardest to deliver, which is thriller or crime or fiction, because you're going for a very specific emotion. You're going for a very specific effect. And I was listening to some of the oldest episodes of Bhaskar Bose, and then I was listening to some of the new ones. And there's a definite evolution there. There's a definite evolution in the style. There's a definite evolution in the way it's been produced. There's definitely evolution in the way that it has been written. Mantra, can you give us some notes about what have been your learnings since you started with Bhaskar Bose and the most recent one that's coming out with Darkaraz? What have been some of those learnings in this admittedly difficult craft?
I mean, yeah, you're right about that. And exactly the way in theater, with radio also it happens, or these audio fiction, what happens is what you're creating is like a living organism. The way you said what you heard in the first few episodes till what you're hearing now in our last few episodes or the current episodes that are coming, Bhaskar Bose is evolving. Or our shows are also evolving because we thrive on our audience, just the way a theater actor or a theater performer thrives on the audience. If the audience gives back something, you adapt according to that. And that's why it's most beautiful is it's a zinda hai wo. ये मीडियम जिंदा है, ये सांस ले रहा है आपके साथ साथ, so it's beating with you rather than, I mean, I always believe, मैं हमेशा सोचा करता था, एक बार thought आया था while I was sitting inside a cinema hall and watching a film on a big screen, and I said, there's nobody actually there. It's a wall. They're just projecting a few lights on it. Salman Khan is not there. So no matter what happens to me, he is not going to respond. But when I saw a theater play and when I looked into the eyes of an actor, I knew that we connected somewhere. And the same way, I try my best. Ki, bhale hi audio show, if you listen to all our episodes, it will almost, you will feel as if it is aaspas ho raha hai. ये कुछ ना कुछ चल रहा है. It's a part of your life. I think that was a big thrill. That was something that worked well for me. And as you said, the other series also that are coming up, or the second series, the detective series that we did with Ahana, or the new show that is launching tomorrow. In fact, what's the date tomorrow, Vineet?
So we're recording this on the 7th of April, and this will go out on the 8th of April, which is the same day that Darkaraz Dr. Phobia comes out.
Yeah, so Darkaraz, it's coming out today. Horror as a genre has really worked well in the audio medium. लोगों की बहुत भट्टी है अरविंद, उनके कान में बोल दो भूत है, उनको दिख जाता है भूत है.
I can't agree more. I was listening to the trailer of Darkaraz and
who's that behind you?
Oh, nice try. I love Mantra for the passion he brings to podcasting. I regularly follow the shows that MM Talkies puts out. I love the grasp on writing and production that they really have, and it's such a promising place to be in Indian podcasting when you have creators like Mantra. The next clip I've got for you on this episode is on the importance of research in creating great content. One of the people that I really look up to in this field of entertainment business is Amogh Dusad from Sony Entertainment. Amogh is the head of content at Sony Entertainment, also the head of a bunch of other things. You'll hear me fumble through his designation in this clip as well. And I look up to him because of his ability to not just spot great stories, but create environments where great stories are told. It comes from his years of training as a marketer and a creative suit. Consumer insights is a discipline that has been a bedrock for Amogh when making decisions. And in this clip, he shares the importance of being the voice of the viewer in a business that is driven by opinion. Amogh's invaluable learnings here made a huge impression on me. And it redoubled my belief in the fact that consumer response is the ultimate source of truth and a barometer for success in entertainment and storytelling. Here's Amogh Dusad from Sony Entertainment talking about content research.
The first thing you said was about was something that I truly relate to as someone who's worked in new media for a while, is going out after the unknown, going out and figuring things out, and that sort of curiosity and want to learn has always stood me in good stead. And it's great to see that that's the driving force for the inspiration behind the other thing, which is consumer insights. It's something that's so central to what we do, right? Who is consuming what we're doing, how they're consuming it, becomes such an important feedback mechanism for innovation, for doing interesting new things. Because I'm sure when KBC started way back when, the behavior that we're talking about has been around since then, right? Families sitting together and answering questions, I'm sure. But it is now that we have the technology to leverage that insight and that behavior and do something so cool with it. Super amazing to see that laid out right up front. Amogh, thank you for that. Let me ask you this, to just draw back from the technology bit, right? And I struggled with this before, but I'm going to do it right this time. Head of programming, partnerships, new initiatives, and digital business. That's a lot, right? What does your day-to-day look like? How does your role engage with the other teams that I'm sure are part of this? And how does it help in keeping someone who's got insights at the heart of it to sort of captain this role? How does that really work in the day-to-day at Sony?
Just a small correction, Vineet. The role is programming, partnerships, and new initiatives.
All right, okay.
Digital business.
Oh, right,
so these
okay.
are verticals that I handle within that business.
I promise I will get it right the next time. I'm sorry.
That's all right. But what doesn't get captured there is the interactivity in the gaming piece.
Right.
That, like you mentioned about consumer insights and analytics is also a function that I work with.
Right.
And that has been something that I've carried as part of my portfolio for almost 12, 13 years now.
Right.
Prior to being in TAM, which itself was a company around the solution. So in that sense, 18 years has been that. And being the voice of the consumer in all business decision is something that I completely enjoy and completely see most amount of value come into business, because especially for a business like media, where you are trying to create content for consumers' tastes and preferences, and every time, every decision you are saying, will this work, pasand aayega, nahi aayega, ye track pasand aayega, it's obvious that you actually want a bounce back from the consumer.
Right.
For some reason, I think the way this has all been channelized, what we are really trying to do is to get consumers' feedback, voice, insight into the creation process.
Absolutely.
In my experience, I've learned that the people that, probably the creative folks are the ones who are most keen to know responses from consumers.
Right.
It just needs to be channelized in the right way. But every creator wants to know. Every creator is creating content for people to love. And early in the journey of that creation process, if they get useful insights on what is working, what is not working, something that can help them improve their process, instead of insights being timed at a time when it is largely passing a verdict on whether it worked or not worked. I think the earlier in the process, if insights come in, then it becomes a lot more constructive, because then the creator is actually seeing some of his doubts getting answered on how consumers are responding. So, and I've been in this business, and it always becomes a sort of a this versus that of creative instincts versus consumer insight, and great content can't be created by consumer feedback. And I genuinely think it is not this versus that. It is great content has to be created by creative expertise. There is no two ways.
Right.
They're always looking for feedback. A writer, when he writes a screenplay, he would always have his wife as the first person to give feedback. I lead the market promotions team, and my producer, when he calls me with or shares an edit with me, and I said, how are you feeling about it? And he invariably says, my dad likes it, my son is not okay, he's not okay about it. So inherently, people need feedback because they get so involved and passionately driven towards creating something. And when they put it together, they want people to know whether it's really working or not. Absolutely. It's just that how the consumer insight piece sort of flows into the process. I think it makes most amount of difference.
let me ask you this then. In a world, I mean, obviously there was a time when, Henry Ford said, if I ask the consumer what he wants, he will tell me I want a faster horse. I mean, that's sort of 120 years ago versus today, right? Where there are entertainment companies like yours and the companies that I've worked at as well, where we're trying to consolidate this feedback that we get from the viewer or from the consumer into creative insights, right? Now, there is feedback that is as amorphous and often pointless as "pasand nahi aaya," I didn't like it, not for me, to the point that we have complex, and on the other end we have complex data signals, right? We have decay rates, we have time spent viewing, attention spans, there are like analysis of eye tracking and all of that, right? How do you try to consolidate, or is there a process that you found in your experience that helps consolidate both of these well? And can you give us a couple of examples if you have? Would be something that I'd be totally super interested in.
So I'll tell you how I feel about this, and this is what I've tried to institutionalize, is that I think the understanding of it's very narrow-minded to go with a piece of content and take consumer feedback. You have to do that, but not great insight is going to emerge out of that. I think it's more important to do consumer immersions than consumer feedback.
Sure.
It's about spending that, half an hour chit-chatting with that panwala in Banaras.
Right.
And that is really what I mean by consumer. It's not so much about getting all of them together in one room and saying, oh, I'm going to show you 3 ads, tell me rate out. That is part of the process, but I don't think a genuine spark of creativity or a genuine idea to create something new emerges out of that. So in my mind, that consumer immersion, because what ends up happening is, you are creating content for 250 million, at least in television, spread across in the speaking markets. You are sitting in Bombay in one office. Your social circle is 15-20 people that you hang around with. Absolutely. And if you, God forbid, if you live in Bandra West, then there is Republic of Bandra West, which operates completely differently from the country.
Right. Availability bias in creativity in that sense.
Yeah. So I just think my only piece of advice, and wherever I've been, I've tried to institutionalize, is actually taking people out of offices in Bombay and getting them into actual consumer markets with consumers, with a sari shop owner, or with a panwala, or with a beauty parlor, a lady who's running a beauty parlor as part extension of her household somewhere in Indore. And I think being there from an observationist point of view, instead of asking questions and getting answers, is where I think. So it's, to my mind, it's not about being reactionary. It's about going with an open mind, saying, I'm creating content or creating a business around creating content for these folks. I can spend a couple of days or at least a day every quarter just hanging out, go to the places they go to the temple, they go to the sweet shop that they go to, what do they like to eat, what do they chat there about, just being the fly on the wall.
Right.
And it's very difficult to get time from the busy schedules of people, but I've found in my experience, because when I take people there, they also get feedback from how the creative team, the marketing team, all the people have responded. The most enriching experience for them has been around that.
From content research to content writing, and the next clip I have is Mehak Mirza Prabhu, really truly a one-of-a-kind storyteller, isn't she? I think Mehak and Rathi are the two storytellers who've been on this show. They're professional storytellers, writers, performers who really left an impression on me about how deeply they live the art and craft of storytelling. Mehak writes this really emotive stories or poems that leave you wondering about the well of experiences and imagination, the depth that she can draw upon when she's writing. And obviously, I asked her a question that has always plagued me, which is writer's block. And here's Mehak's secret to beating writer's block in the most poetic way. Listen.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I have struggled with it personally as well, right? Which is a non sort of very everyday way of putting it is writer's block, but it's not just writer's block, right? Writer's block is not like, it's not a drain, ki wo block ho gaya hai, right? Writer's block is a complex thing. It has so many aspects, so many facets. There is fear of capability, fear of reception, there is fear of putting yourself out there. Writer's block is, like I said, a complex black box that happens, right? Have you ever encountered that?
I have had phases of not being able to write for a long time, but I'm going to quote someone here, okay? And that is Satyanshu sir, who takes script writing classes, okay?
Right.
And he said one thing which suddenly simplified everything for me about writer's block. And the thing that he said was, it's a myth. Writer's block is a complete myth, and you just have to start allowing yourself to write bad. Because the minute you start allowing yourself to write bad, suddenly all the pressures that you just spoke about, all go away. Nobody can stop you from writing bad. You are stopping yourself because you want yourself to create your Picasso masterpiece right at that moment, which may not happen.
Right.
So then this is something that I completely took on to me. I tell my students also this, and I completely live by it now. When I have nothing that is coming, I write absolute rubbish on my paper. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But I have to pour it out. वो होता है ना कि अगर आप नल बंद करके रखो और काफी टाइम बाद अगर खोलो, so what will come out? Obviously, कचरा will come out. ठीक है? But if you accept that कचरा and still keep the null open, that's where fresh water will start coming in.
Fantastic. I can see why you run a successful storytelling school.
One of the most fun episodes to do was with Ritu Rathi and Gaurav Taneja together. This was early in the lockdown, and I mean, I really think they're the first family of content creation, right? They're the cutest live, beautiful little daughter as well, and millions of fans tune in to be part of their story and share their life in the vlogosphere, if you will, right? In this clip, I asked them about starting out being creators and how them being a team was really what was the bedrock for their success, right? Gaurav learned how to shoot, edit, create content. Ritu learned how to manage Gaurav and herself as they grew. And I loved how they complement each other so well, holding up one part of the skills and qualities each needed to be a great team. Hear them talk about it and then come back for a brilliant clip from my recent episode with comedian and musician Aakash Mehta.
Let me ask you this, and specifically to Gaurav about the creative side and to Ritu about the business side. Gaurav, you're trained to be a pilot, but being a creator obviously comes with so many other skills, right? There's obviously the storytelling part with fitness and bodybuilding. There is the technical aspects, and then there is the production aspect, right? Editing, the skills that go behind it, etc. And similarly for Ritu, on the business side, it's not the most natural progression from a pilot to a creator manager, right? How did you guys learn the tricks of the trade? Gaurav, like I said, on the creative and the production side, and for Ritu on the managerial side. Was there something that you fell back on? Were there people who helped you out that you consulted with? How did that go about?
Actually, Vineet, what I have seen, I think it's kind of like similar for Gaurav as well as for me. And this is the kind of learning which we had during these 2-3 years when we started working on FlyingBeast. Nothing is difficult here, and there is no training which you require to do something. I mean, there are people, who you cannot really say if you want to become a manager, you need to have a management class or you need to go through a training. Right. No, I think once you step into a field, time teaches you, and if you are dedicated and if you really want to make it work, everything flows with it.
I think you just have to be a dedicated hustler to learn things and to get things done. I think if you decide कि मुझे करना है no matter what, खत्म बात.
Right.
फिर आप सब कर जाओगे. और अगर आपको था कि यार ठीक है मुझसे नहीं हो रहा, क्या मैं कुछ और ट्राई करूं क्या? Like there should be not like giving up तो option होना नहीं चाहिए. That's what we say in bodybuilding. Giving up is not an option.
Exactly. Like I didn't have an option कि because कि गौरव के लिए मैनेजर कोई और रख ले हम या कहीं से ढूंढ ले, because we had no experience in that. But so I had no choice. I actually had to do that work. And similarly for Gaurav, I think he started editing, he started learning on internet, he started doing everything on his own. So gradually when you step into field, I think you learn everything.
You learn, and there are so many different people who are doing it better than you. You थोड़ा tutorials देखा YouTube से कैसे करते हैं, how to do stuff वाला DIY देखा. And then obviously I think editing part, shooting part, थोड़ा सा आपका ना एक creative side भी होता है which comes into play. मतलब हो सकता है आपने जिंदगी भर कभी कैमरा नहीं उठाया, but once you really pick it up, then you feel कि हाँ यार I have this side कि मेरे को photos का angle लेना you have a better understanding of taking that. Like Ritu को मैं कैमरा देता हूँ ना, she doesn't take a good shot. तो हमारी हर बार आती होती है बात यार. I am like, मैंने को कितना सिखाया? How many times I've taught you कि this is 1/3 rule. You keep the subject on the side and the background का distance होना चाहिए.
And it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, क्या बात कर रहे हैं?
तो वो एक नेचुरल इंक्लिनेशन होता है हर बंदे का अलग अलग फील्ड के टुवर्ड्स. वो मैंने देखा है.
हाँ, ये है.
So if she is good with something, maybe I'm not good with that. If I'm good with something, maybe उसको नहीं जमेगा, वो समझ में नहीं आएगा.
And I think you keep learning with time. We are still learning, we are still evolving, we are still thinking कि अच्छा अब क्या करना चाहिए, कैसे better होगा, क्या मतलब I think you learn with your faults also.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I think what came through what you said made absolute sense to me, but something unsaid also came through is you had each other to fall back on, and you had each other to kind of complement what Gaurav does well with what Ritu can bring and what Ritu does well for Gaurav as well. I think that's an important unsaid bit that really, really came through.
Let me get started by asking you about the thing that you just touched upon, right? Every time you take up a project, it helps you become a better person, of course. Creating, I mean, the whole magic of creation, and if you really are someone who cares about, what goes out under your name, obviously, creating is practice for getting better at it, right? I want you to help me understand or give me your notes on how your music and your writing interplay into each other, right? Because you've been performing for a very long time. You've been a musician, like you said, for a very long time. Somewhere deep inside, I think the connect is you, right? The creator is you, the same person. How do they feed into each other?
I mean, see, I think, so I grew up listening to Sigur Rós a lot. So I feel like, and Sigur Rós, if you don't know, it's an Icelandic band for you listening at home. And basically, उनका ये फंड है कि वो लोग ना हॉपलैंडिक पे गाते हैं. आप पूछोगे हॉपलैंडिक कौन सा भाषा? वो भाषा ही नहीं है, हिंदी गा रहे हो. And the whole idea of Johnzy, वो local lead singer, तो उनका फंडा क्या है कि the voice is an instrument. So use it like an instrument, make sounds out of it that sound appealing in the moment. So I was like, oh, अगर ये कर सकते हो तो अगर लिरिक्स लिख रहे हो जो समझ में आते तो ऐसे लिखो कि सही में समझ आए. Like, I mean, it should be something that actually makes sense. I mean, I hate songs that have 6 cliche lines in a row, I'm not saying that I won't dance to them, but because that's a whole different level of connection that you feel to music. As a never mind. But I don't want to say unnecessarily controversial बोल के मतलब नहीं. खुद का controversy बना सकते. The idea that way has transcended into stand-up as well. I mean, if I'm on stage and I'm saying words out of my mouth, and people have paid money to come and watch, So I mean, you have to ensure that what you're saying is worth it. And really, that's been the approach with the music as well. Honestly, I feel like it's 2 different folks. Honestly, I feel like it's 2 different people sometimes. The guy that makes the music and the guy that tells the jokes, because the guy that's telling the jokes is so busy on the jokes that he doesn't really. Let me put it this. The guy writing the jokes needs you to laugh at the jokes.
Right.
But the guy writing the music is independent of that feeling, because comedy is so objective as far as art forms are concerned, because you have a very single-minded approach in terms of what you want out of them. Music leaves you that space to leave things just, those grey feelings that are in the middle of feelings. Same with writing shows, I think something that Biswa told me that still stays with me today. He said the problem with stand-up is that either you're the protagonist or the narrator or both. Well, I'm telling the joke makes a huge difference to how the joke is perceived.
Of course.
That's why I've dressed a certain way all these years. And that's why I dress differently now after I finished 10 years in stand-up. But in music, and I'm not a guy who's a big fan of music videos and all, by the way.
Right.
I don't care. I'm an oral guy. I want to listen. I want to listen. And you know what I mean when I say, because you're in the same generation, man. You used to download an entire discography of an artist when you liked them.
Of course.
And then you're listening to some random live in Glasgow. Why? But maybe there's some gold there, and you give yourself to it. So I I'm always a believer of that as well, because when I'm like, if you discover me in 2055, I don't want you to discover a guy who tells jokes, man. I want you to discover a whole person.
There you heard Aakash Mehta, long-time comedian, long-time musician as well. Recently he's putting out his EP What a Life, and I love the conversation that I had with him. He was so open about his position, his place as a creator, as an entertainer in this world. Right? He's there as a vessel to bring about stories, emotions, entertainment, and present himself as a complete person. And I really, really identified with that. I think it was very important and sort of something that others have also spoken about, right? About creating from a place of honesty and creating from a place of completion, as opposed to creating from what works in the market or just giving people what they're looking for. The next conversation that I'm going to take you through is my chat with Siddharth Anand Kumar from Udly Film. Siddharth, he's VP at Udly, and our chat was just mad illuminating about how Udly is disrupting every aspect of the movie business to create a more sustainable model of producing just great story. Right? He told me about how in their 4 years of being around, Udly has created a different way of selecting, producing, and distributing movies. Something that has created a big disruption in the movie business, which has essentially been run the same way for the longest time till OTTs really came around, right? This disruption has really helped position Udly in a way that where they can take advantage of this theater, OTT, digital, real world puzzle, whichever way it goes, right? He talks about disrupting, selecting stories. He talks about packaging it, which means the actors and actresses and the money that goes into it. He also talked about disrupting distribution. Here's Siddharth Anand Kumar from Udly talking about their disruptive report card. Siddharth, I want to get started by asking you a report card question. 100 films in 5 years was the stated aim. In 2017, I think that was when the genesis of Udly happened. Where are you on that journey?
So we're on film number 23.
Right.
We are also making 2 series right now. And you know, the way I look at a series is 2 episodes is roughly equivalent to the effort in a film.
Right.
So if I add another 8 films to that, our number would be 31.
Right.
So yeah, we didn't make 100. I don't think we were ever looking to make 100. It was an aim that we gave ourselves, going by the old adage that if you want to reach the moon, you should aim for the stars. But I do think, given the fact that we have made, I would say, 22 films, not counting the series now, in a span of 4.5 years, that does put us amongst one of the more prolific studios in the country.
Absolutely.
Because unlike other studios, so, you know, if you look at a T-series, the numbers would be bigger. We are producing every film ourselves.
Right.
We develop every film ourselves. We bring the talent in. We make the talent partner with us on a profit share basis, as well as giving them fees. And we then release that movie, you know, sometimes theatrically, sometimes on OTT. So we are actually handling the efforts of a studio as well as a creative production house,
right,
within one format. The reason for doing this, obviously, is because when we started, you know, Saregama is a public limited company. We are working on public funds. We have a befittingly conservative approach to risk in that sense.
Right.
And, you know, the need also to take public money and to enter into the filmmaking business is always risky.
Right.
Because the filmmaking business is the kind of business that, you know, investors are always a little wary of. It's traditionally not seen as a business which has any method to the madness. It's only madness. Right. And of course, very famously, large enterprises have come to India and lost a lot of money and quit and left and floundered along the way. So if we come to the report card idea, what are some of the very innovative things we did? One was that, you know, like I said, we do not respect stardom within our films.
Right.
What typically happens, you know, for the sake of a lay person listening, is that if a film's budget is X, a big star could very well be taking 4X as their own fees in a film.
Right.
So that's a very, very disproportionate or asymmetric sort of take that the big star takes.
Absolutely.
And then you're also forced, because you're now spending a lot of money on one particular aspect, you're forced to make a film that caters to the brand image of that star.
Right.
So if the star is known for action, you will make an action film. So scope for innovation goes out. you start spending money on a lot of things which are not necessarily on the screen.
Right.
Entourage costs and so on and so forth. So that was one of the main innovations we took on. Another place a lot of studios, I think, lose budget is that they allow some other company to come and take line production.
Right.
We've not done that. So we've actually tried to build every capacity in-house. So we have a team of line producers who are employed by Saregama, who work on each and every Yoodlee film. So this makes sure that we are not giving out 5 to 10% of money to another company, which is actually picking up no risk, but is spending the money. Right. And thereby we have managed to control costs very tightly. Another innovation has been that, one, we work with a lot of first or second time directors. In fact, most of our work happens with first or second time directors. So we serve as a talent discovery platform. And these people are brought in on a slightly lower upfront cost, which is a fee, in lieu of profit share. So Saregama is a royalty paying company. It's also, a public limited. It is audited. We have a large amount of royalty payment that goes out from our company. We've used that same sort of genetic framework to the movie business.
Super interesting.
And I'm very proud to tell you, a lot of our filmmakers have received profit share payments from us. So that system is robust and it works, and it allows us to keep our upfront costs as low as possible. Again, the intention is to focus on the film. We also then, like I said, we take risks, but we take them conservatively. We started with lower budget films, very much in the indie space. Right. So our risks were lower and our capacity to make films faster was definitely there in terms of scale. But the market has evolved, and as the OTT, and I'm sure you'll ask more questions about that, as the OTT world has sort of matured, I think now there's a greater demand for recognizable faces. I would still not call them stars because they're not at 4x the cost of production. But recognizable faces and genre-based films. Because you would notice, at least I do as a consumer, when I watch a film, so let's say I get onto a platform, I try to gauge my mood. मेरे को comedy देखना है, मेरे को action देखना है, मेरे को horror देखना है, and then I'll go to those buckets and try and pick up a film. So I think that kind of consumer behavior and the way you interact with an OTT platform has led to OTT platforms also understanding that films need to be made in genre buckets. And most of indie cinema falls under the broad genre bucket of drama. So interest in drama, I think, is waned over time. And interest in genre films, comedy, action, thriller, horror, action adventure has grown.
One of the conversations that I really enjoyed having earlier last year was with Jasleen Royal. Now, Jasleen's journey in music, from a young indie talent from Ludhiana to one of the most popular singers of last year. I think her song from Rajna was the second most listened song on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken. That's an extraordinary journey. And remember that she's a self-taught musician, and she's worked with the best in the business and really leveled up her creative output in the process, right? And we talked about how to really grow your creative process as you go from waiting for inspiration to not finding the right answers to being hard on yourself. And what I really loved about how Jasleen talks in this clip is how she's accepted not being too hard on herself when her creative output doesn't reach the high benchmark that she set for herself, that she's okay to give it another shot a little while later. What I also loved is how she talks about her sponge-like ability to learn from her collaborators and just her comfort with not knowing everything. Here's Jasleen Royal talking about her creative process.
Let me ask you this. Since you've been singing for what I'm sure is almost all of your life, right? I mean, given the prodigious talent that you are, how has your approach changed maybe over the years, right? Is there a sort of creative process? Is there a singing style or influence? How can you take us on a journey saying, okay, let's do it this way, right? Can you tell me maybe those 3 or 4 songs which you thought were level up for yourself as an artist? Maybe that's a different, better way of asking that question.
Yeah, I can't think of it like that, but over the years, like meeting more people working with so many other minds like Amit Trivedi, Sachin Jigar, Swanand Kirkire, like some of the people I've collaborated with. Some like reading Rahman's book, like seeing all these people, how they work, you get validated in a way that, because there's no process to making music.
Right.
So when I was working on Hitchkey with Yash Raj, so I saw people were very comfortable saying that they could not crack the song. Earlier, I would have a really tough time if someone called me and I was on a deadline and they asked me like, song hua kya? Kitna ban gaya? And I would try to dodge the call. I would not pick up, and I would get like under a lot of stress. And I would reply saying ki kar to rahi hu, matlab like. But then I started accepting the fact that it's a creative process, though there's no like process to it.
Right.
Like it'll come if you sit at it, but it might not come. So just acknowledge it. It's okay. It's okay to not have cracked a song in that period. So I would like really be hard on myself, and I learned that from my journey on Hitchkey. And like while I was reading A.R. Rahman's book, so he said like he doesn't follow any structure to a song. Like he can give an interlude wherever. He doesn't follow like verse, chorus, verse. Yeah. And which I have done in a couple of my songs, like from Gully Boy, Jahan Tu Chala, and Miney. So there's no like standard structure. So I felt okay. I felt like, okay, so it's okay to be, following your own way of doing things. And because I look up to these people, so you kind of get validated for the stuff you're doing. And I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know if I'm answering your question right.
No, you are. There's no right or wrong answer. Loving this.
But that's what I'm saying. Like with every project or with every new encounter with someone else who I look up to, I found something new, and I found peace with not knowing much. That's a really big thing for me, because I'm a self-taught musician, right. And I've learned everything on my own. Like I've picked it up on the way. So even my singing or whatever it is, I am not a trained singer. I just sing because I love playing the guitar. That's how I discovered my love for singing. So, and I come from a small town, Ludhiana, and you don't have music schools there, or, there's not much exposure. So whatever I've learned is like, I see sun ke, apne liye ga ke. So that's what I've learned. Like there's no one way to do things, and it's okay not to know everything. And as long as I feel the song I've created is making me feel something when I hear it, I think I've done a good job.
And finally, the last clip for this episode, this 100th episode special, was the conversation I had with Ujjwal Chaurasia, also known as TechnoGamerz, about how GTA really saved his channel and really got him to grow. It's an insane story. It's a crazy story. There's a full 10-15-minute segment where in my episode with him where he really breaks down his growth strategy in a lot of detail. But the part that really stood out to me on this episode was how GTA saved his channel. Now, Ujjwal was already a gamer. He had a couple of channels that were already working. He had a channel for his esports and a channel for his content. But when he hit about 400,000 subscribers, he was not seeing the same kind of growth that he saw in his early days. And that's when creating something original out of something that has mass appeal, like GTA, really, really worked for him, right? Right after the PUBG boom, he started creating this kind of interesting web series using GTA scenes and cutscenes. And that really, really took off, right? Creativity, how he got his channel to grow again on the back of this sort of creative inspiration. Totally worth learning from for all creators everywhere.
उस टाइम पबजी बहुत ज्यादा बूस्ट हो गया था और मेरे को एक शौक था कि भाई मुझे पबजी के टूर्नामेंट खेलने हैं बस. अब तो उस टूर्नामेंट को खेलने के चक्कर में मैंने अपने भाई से, मतलब मेरे भाई ने एक नया फोन लिया, अच्छा फोन जिसमें पबजी भी अच्छे से चले, उसमें से मैंने गेम प्ले रिकॉर्ड करना स्टार्ट करे. तो वहां पे मैंने क्या करा, जो मेरा लाइव स्ट्रीम वाला चैनल था जिसपे कुछ अच्छी खासी मतलब ज्यादा ग्रोथ नहीं थी, उस चैनल को मैंने उठा दिया गेम प्ले डाल के. बट उसमें क्या हुआ, जो मेरा मेन चैनल था वो डाउन चला गया. अब जैसा कि मैंने कहा था मुझे टूर्नामेंट्स खेलने हैं, तो टूर्नामेंट में जाने का मतलब है गेम प्ले वगैरह पे हम उतना टाइम नहीं दे सकते. ई स्पोर्ट्स में पूरा ना अपनी टीम के साथ प्रैक्टिस पे फोकस करना होता है।
करेक्ट।
तो उस टाइम मैंने उस चीज पे फोकस करा। अब क्या हुआ, ये जो दोनों चीज थी, दोनों चैनल मेरे पूरे डाउन चले गए। मतलब एक चैनल पे थे अराउंड 3 लाख सब्सक्राइबर मेन वाले पे आप कह सकते हो, और सेकंड वाले पे भी 1 लाख समथिंग थे, बट व्यूज दोनों पे ऐसे खत्म हो गए थे। मतलब मेन चैनल पे तो अगर 3 लाख सब्सक्राइबर है तो 15,000 व्यूज आ रहे हैं, 10,000 व्यूज आ रहे हैं,
क्योंकि आपने कुछ महीने कुछ दिन वीडियो नहीं डाला।
मतलब ऐसे वीकली एक वीडियो डाल दी, कभी 2 हफ्ते में एक वीडियो डाल दी। मतलब मैंने पूरा मेन फोकस ना टूर्नामेंट्स पे कर दिया था। अब सीन क्या हुआ कि टूर्नामेंट में भी नहीं जा पाया, सेमीफाइनल्स तक पहुंचे बट उसके बाद हो गए डिस्क्वालीफाई। मतलब डिस्क्वालीफाई मींस हम लोग फाइनल्स तक नहीं पहुंच पाए, उतने पॉइंट्स हम लोग नहीं कलेक्ट कर पाए कि हम फाइनल्स में जा पाए। अब जब मैं उसके बाद मुड़ के वापस आया, मैंने वीडियोस डालना रेगुलर स्टार्ट करी, देखो भाई ये क्या हो गया, 15,000 व्यूज ऑडियंस का चले गए। मतलब ऐसे झटका सा लगा बहुत तेज। उस टाइम एक बहुत ज्यादा मतलब डाउन पॉइंट था मेरे लिए। मतलब ऐसा हो रहा था कि हाँ थोड़ा सा बंद ही करते। अब मतलब समझ ही नहीं आ रहा मैं टूर्नामेंट्स में ही पूरा चले जाऊं, क्योंकि मैं इस टाइम पर एक ऐसा प्लेयर बन चुका था कि शायद मैं नेक्स्ट ट्राई करूं तो टूर्नामेंट में चले जाऊं, या फिर मैं ये भी मेरे दिमाग में था कि अगर मैं कंटेंट पे फोकस करूंगा तो शायद मैं और बेटर कर लूं। मैं कंफ्यूज हो गया था उस टाइम पे पूरा। तो लेकिन मेरे दिमाग में ना मेरे भाई ने भी एक चीज समझाई कि YouTube जो है अपना फुल बैलेंस चीज है, इस पे काम करेंगे तो हमें रिजल्ट मिलना है। PUBG का कुछ पता नहीं है, अगर मेरा गेम प्ले इंप्रूव हुआ है तो जरूरी थोड़ी है सिर्फ मैं ही बाहर गया हूँ, सामने वाले और भी प्लेयर्स का गेम प्ले इंप्रूव हुआ होगा। मतलब उसने एक डीमोटिवेट नहीं करा, उसने वहां पर भी एक सही रास्ता दिखाया, समझाया, और वो चीज मेरे को भी क्लियर हो गई थी कि हाँ YouTube मेरे लिए बैलेंस्ड है। एक प्लेटफॉर्म को मैंने पहले इतना टाइम लगा दिया बिल्ड करने में, और आज मैं उसी को खराब कर रहा हूँ, जो कि मेरा रियल पैशन है। अब इस टाइम पर ये हो गया था, रियल पैशन PUBG भी था क्योंकि उसमें जाना है, बट वहां पर ये था कि हाँ ये बैलेंस चीज है। PUBG भी मतलब 2 नाव पे पैर रखना है बट दोनों को बैलेंस करना है। वहां पर मैंने ये स्ट्रैटेजी लगाई और दोनों चैनल पे वापस से एक एक करके वीडियोस डालना स्टार्ट करी, धीरे 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 करके दोनों चैनल वापस से उठाए। और फिर उसके बाद जब 4 लाख सब्सक्राइबर्स हुए तो वहां पे मेन मैंने क्या करा कि कंटेंट ना चेंज करना स्टार्ट करा, पीसी गेम्स पे शिफ्ट करा। पहले मोबाइल गेम्स ही खेलता था मैं, सारी में पे मोबाइल ही था, तो उस टाइम पे एक अच्छा पीसी आ गया था एडिटिंग वगैरह के लिए। तो मैं एक गेम मोबाइल का डाल रहा हूँ, एक पीसी का डाल रहा हूँ, जो मैंने पहले स्ट्रेटेजी लगाई थी कि एक ड्रैगन बॉल Z के सेम स्ट्रेटेजी मैंने रिपीट करी, एक मोबाइल नहीं 2 मोबाइल के गेम एक पीसी, 2 मोबाइल एक पीसी करते करते फिर मैंने एक दिन GTA खेल ली। अब GTA आप कह सकते हो जिसने असली चैनल को बूस्ट दिया बहुत ज्यादा, मतलब GTA की गेम प्ले सीरीज ने। वैसे तो GTA 7 साल पुराना गेम है, हर एक बंदे ने खेला हुआ है, देखा हुआ है। अब मैं उस गेम को 7 साल, हाँ गेम लेजेंडरी है, बट मेरे में दिक्कत ये थी कि मैं उस गेम को 7 साल बाद खेल रहा हूँ। अब 7 साल आप कह सकते हो कोई भी गेम आके डेड होके गायब भी हो जाता है इतने दिन में। वो तो GTA की एवरग्रीन गेम है, वो चलता जा रहा है, चलता रहेगा।
बिल्कुल
एक और एडवांटेज वो था, और वो तो गेम भी ऐसे हर किसी को देख के एकदम फुल मजा आता है, ओपन वर्ल्ड कहीं भी जाए वो।
बिल्कुल।
तो मेरा ये था कि उसकी जो स्टोरी मोड है, जो GTA की कहानी है ना, वो सबको पता है कि कैसे गेम शुरू होती है, कैसे गेम खत्म होती है, सबको पता है वो। बट मैंने ना एक अपनी नई कहानी उसमें स्टार्ट करी। जैसे अब हम वेब सीरीज वगैरह देखते हैं ना नेटफ्लिक्स वगैरह पे, तो मैंने ये कहानी GTA में स्टार्ट करी, एक अपनी स्टोरी लाइन बनाई जिसको मैं खुद ही पूरा, क्योंकि GTA में हम कुछ भी कर सकते हैं, मतलब उसमें अगर हम मोड्स आते हैं, मोड्स का यूज करके हम कुछ भी कर सकते हैं। मैंने वो चीज उसमें डाली और ऑडियंस को भी उसमें बहुत ज्यादा। फर्स्ट एपिसोड में इतना मजा नहीं आया, फर्स्ट एपिसोड मैंने नॉर्मली खेल दिया क्योंकि मैंने भी GTA इतनी नहीं खेली थी। मैंने आप कह सकते हो GTA कभी किसी दोस्त के पीसी में या फिर कभी किसी गेम पार्लर में खेली थी, बट पहली बार अपने पीसी में आई तो मेरे को ये था मेरे को सही से खेलनी है। फर्स्ट एपिसोड डाला, ऑडियंस का ठीक ठाक रिस्पॉन्स आया, मेरा अंदर से मन था। मैंने दूसरे एपिसोड में ऐसे दिखा दिया कि मैंने ना आज अपने एक दोस्त को KTM गिफ्ट कर दी, ऐसे एक कहानी बना दी, छोटी सी कहानी कि एक दोस्त को KTM गिफ्ट कर दी। अब वो दिया, आपको इस चीज में बहुत ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट आने वाला है कि कैसे एक कहानी अब कहां से कहां पहुंची है। तो बस एक KTM गिफ्ट करी। अब उसका मैंने अब उसमें बंदे को मजा आया। KTM एक ऑडियंस का मतलब एक बंदे का कमेंट आया था कि आप ना उसको रिटर्न गिफ्ट दो, आपको रिटर्न गिफ्ट क्या मिला। तो मैंने जिसको गिफ्ट मिला था उसकी तरफ से मैंने कहा कि अब इसको रिटर्न गिफ्ट में प्राइम मिनिस्टर की गाड़ी चोरी करके दे दी। ये बहुत ज्यादा बड़े लेवल का हो गया था। अब गाड़ी चोरी करके दी। अब 4th एपिसोड मैंने उससे फिर लिंक कराया कि जो गाड़ी चोरी करके दी थी वो गाड़ी के पीछे बहुत ज्यादा पुलिस आ गई क्योंकि वो गाड़ी थी प्राइम मिनिस्टर की। उस बंदे को जेल ले गए। फिर मैंने नेक्स्ट स्टोरी जोड़ी कि अब उसको जेल ले गए मेरी वजह से, अब मुझे उसे जेल से रेस्क्यू कराना होगा, मतलब एस्केप करवाना है प्रिजन से, प्रिजन एस्केप करवाया। तो ऐसी स्टोरी जुड़ते 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 आज अराउंड 139 एपिसोड्स हो गए उस GTA सीरीज के, जिसमें से मैक्सिमम एपिसोड 1 hour plus के हैं, 1 घंटे से ऊपर के, और कह सकते हो 70% से ऊपर पे 10 मिलियन प्लस व्यूज है. मतलब ये जो स्टोरी बनती चली गई ना, बहुत ज्यादा नेक्स्ट लेवल हो गई थी, और ऑडियंस का इस पे अभी तक बहुत प्यारा, बहुत अच्छा रिस्पॉन्स आ रहा है.
So that's it. That was my 100th episode special. I really wanted to do something different. 100 episodes, 100 times doing something is a very interesting place to be. It's where you start wanting to experiment a little bit more. It's where you start wanting to do stuff bigger a little bit more, especially for me who's not been a creator, so to speak, before this podcast. I'm very excited for the next 100 episodes of this show. We've got some great plans, like I've said. Some of the biggest creators, some of the brightest minds. The idea is to continue doing what we've been doing, create this sort of space where people who are interested in the entertainment industry in India can all look at this podcast and say, hey, this is the place where I learned this about this industry that I love, or where I found out this very interesting story about how this show that I loved, or this song that I loved really took off. I'm so grateful for people who helped put the show really helped put the show together. I'm so grateful for you to listen to it. I'm so grateful to all my guests who spare their time to have such wonderful conversations with me. I love a lot of the guests who are on here are doing what they really think makes a difference in this world. And I love their passion and love the intensity with which they do it. And I hope that I can learn from their intensity and bring a little bit more entertainment and fun to this podcast. That's it from me, Vineet Kanabar, on this 100th episode of Storytellers and Storysellers. If you like this episode, do stay on, check out some of the other episodes. I've got some great fun folks on the show talking about the stuff that they do. If you like the show already, give us a shout out on social media or give us a rating on any of the podcast apps. Save us, download us. All of that really helps get more discovery for this show. Once again, that's it. This is Vineet Kanabar. You're listening to Storytellers and Storysellers. Goodbye.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to Anil Vishwanathan of Mondelez India. They discuss the beloved Cadbury brand and its campaigns over the years. On Speakeasy, Dheeraj is in conversation with Ranjit Pratap Singh, the CEO and co-founder of Pratilipi. Hey, that's our parent company. They talk about how Ranjit tapped into the need for non-English storytelling content and created a company with over 30 million readers worldwide. On Smarter with Sid, resolved to have better resolutions. Sid tells us how understanding the difference between objectives and outcomes can be liberating. On Tere Mere Raaste, Keshu takes us to Dubai, world of skyscrapers, world-class infrastructure, glittering malls, and massive boulevards. On the Life Manifesto, Zarina goes over the concept of self-abandonment. She explains the do's and don'ts of dealing with it. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do tell a friend. The word of mouth absolutely is essential to us. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you've been listening to. And also, I'd like to ask everybody to check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels going. You can find all of them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Intel. Thank you so much for making this possible.
A wise man once said, traveling, it makes you speechless, then turns you into a storyteller.
Well, listen to such travel stories and experiences exploring India on the Musafir Stories with us, Saif and Faiza.
Catch us on the IVM website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.